Hi everyone. Hello, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Hector Perez Aponte. I'm the Racial Justice Policy Analyst for the Economic Progress Institute and the coordinator of the Equity Impact Campaign. I'd like to start off again by thanking everybody for being here. Thank you to our speakers to coming here to talk with us about the importance of equity and what it means for our work going forward. Thank you to the legislators in attendance, including the champions that we have here, Senator Mack, Representative Morales in the back, Councilwoman, although not a champion of the legislation, Councilwoman Cristina Contreras Fox. Thank you for being here. And before I'd like to bring up our speakers, I'd also like to center ourselves. I'd like to provide a definition for the term equity that's been provided, drafted by the Equity Impact Campaign. We encourage folks to think about equity in the context of access to resources and opportunities. And in this case, equity, we define equity as providing access and opportunities for all Rhode Islanders by ensuring that policies, programs, and our state budget correct historic disparities. And with that said, I'd like to hand the mic off to our amazing Executive Director, Wynonna Nelson-Davies.
Is it on now?
No.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and it's so good to have you all here. Press conferences usually don't kick off until at least late January, so Rep. Morales and Senator Mack have us out here early before a good cause. Thank you again. I am very proud to stand here not just as the Executive Director of the Economic Progress Institute, but as someone who from the very beginning believed in the vision of this Equity Impact Campaign. That we will be ready when the time came to champion equity, justice, and transformation in Rhode Island. We officially launched this campaign just shy of 2 years ago in March 2023. And then the attacks started right away, right in this very State House. But we did not back down. And then when the Supreme Court gave folks an excuse to turn their backs on equity center commitments and the communities they promised to uplift, we did not back down. And why? Because we know we are on the right side of history here. Incorporating equity impact statements in the House rules would be amazing. If we put them in legislation and our state budget, it gave us an opportunity to unite Rhode Island behind a core message that attacks or no attacks, the fight for equity in Rhode Island is not dead. Do you all hear me? We kind of need some energy in this room. This is a promise for justice, for freedom, and true democracy in action. As we look around our state, we know that equity is not some abstract ideal or woke idea created by those progressive people. These are boxes meant to divide us. But equity is not divisive. It is about solving real, painful disparities we see every day that prevent us as a state and as a nation from reaching our full potential. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, in their 2024 report, Rhode Island has the second highest percentage of people experiencing chronic patterns of homelessness at 48%. Families with children, veterans who have served this country, Black and brown Rhode Islanders. Equity is housing policy as a right in action. In our core cities, Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, Woonsocket, Rhode Island children sit in crumbly schools with outdated materials. Equity means that children in Rhode Island, no matter their zip code, has access to good education. Equity is education in action that gives every child equal opportunity to succeed. According to our EPI's 2024 Rhode Island Standard of Need report, working Rhode Islanders, particularly women, people of color, and older Rhode Islanders, are not earning enough to meet their basic needs. 73% of single adult Rhode Island women, 64% of single adult men cannot meet their basic needs. 91% of Latino single-parent households with 2 children and 64% of Latino 2-parent households with 2 children cannot meet their basic needs. The retirement income of our older Rhode Islanders are not enough. These numbers are not accidental. There are policies that created them and continue to maintain these inequities. Equity is access to economic opportunity in action so all Rhode Islanders can thrive.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. When we talk about equity impact statements, we are talking about important tools for policymakers to shine a light on how laws affect ordinary, real people. These statements ask the question, will this budgetary or policy decision increase or decrease inequities for Rhode Islanders? With these statements, we can take an important step to prevent harm before it is done. And every time we are intentional about centering equity, we move closer to a Rhode Island where no one is left behind. I want to make this clear again. Those of us fighting for equity are on the right side of history. While others may run for the hills, we run towards a state and a future that works for all of us and the next generation. With deep gratitude to Senator Mack, Rep. Morales, and all of our legislative champions for not giving up on us, for standing firm as champions at this moment, in this moment. I encourage you to continue to use your power to shape a more equitable Rhode Island. You are on the right side of history. To the members of the Equity Impact Campaign, we are ready for this moment in our nation's history. I encourage you to also continue to stand firm. And I would like to end by asking you to join me so that we can say it loud for the people in the back, for those in the front, for those on the top floor, for those at the entrance of the State House, and I want this message to go across. So can you join me, please? I want you to repeat. The fight for equity is alive in Rhode Island.
The fight for equity is alive in Rhode Island.
Equity is democracy in action.
Equity is democracy in action.
Equity is liberation in action.
Equity is liberation in action.
Equity is opportunity in action.
Equity is opportunity in action.
And equity is policy in action.
Equity is policy in action.
Thank you all so much. Let's go forth.
Thank you, Wayana. Next, I'd like to call up John Marion, the Executive Director of Common Cause Rhode Island.
Yeah, I get to follow that. No call and response. So, good afternoon. Again, I'm John Marion from Common Cause Rhode Island. I want to thank EPI for putting this together, both this proposal and this press conference, and especially Representative Morales and Senator Mack for introducing the resolutions in the House and Senate. You may be wondering, what does a group like Common Cause Rhode Island have to do with the proposal for providing equity impact statements for proposed legislation? Well, we are really here for 2 reasons. First, Common Cause Rhode Island believes that we must build equity into our public policy. For too long, legislation in this building, or that has come out of this building, has not considered how it will impact a variety of communities. I'll leave it to the many other speakers who are going to come after me today to provide more expertise in this area and explain why we will all benefit as a state when our public policy is more equitable. But second, Common Cause Rhode Island, we believe in an informed decision-making process where everyone has access to the information they need. This proposal will increase the kind and amount of information that lawmakers have available to them. When lawmakers have more information about legislation, they can make better arguments, whether it's for or against the merits of a proposal. And when they have more information about the equity impact of legislation, they can better represent the needs and wishes of their constituents. Because information is power, those with access to the information have historically held the power in Rhode Island. The result has been legislation that reflects the priorities of those in power. Equity impact statements give more information and thus power to rank and file legislators who can use it to make sure that a more diverse set of voices are considered in the legislative process. The lack of information is particularly problematic for a part-time legislature like we have here in Rhode Island. With little individual staff, it is up to lawmakers to do the research and policy evaluation themselves. Legislators with full-time jobs, whether it be the head of a wrestling league, trying to be funny here for Representative Morales, full-time jobs or families or other obligations don't have the time or resources to do the sort of research that we're talking about with these equity impact statements. So by putting this proposal into the rules of the House and Senate, it will signal that both the House and the Senate are prioritizing equitable public policy and equitable policymaking in the General Assembly. So thank you very much. Pleasure to be a part of this coalition.
Thank you, John. Before I call up the next speaker, I'd like to thank Senator Jake Castillion for being here and recognizing Senator here in the room. Next, I'd like to call up Rose Albert, who's the Executive Director of the Rhode Island for Community and Justice.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Rose. I use the She Siri, the executive of Rhode Island for Community and Justice. We are a nonprofit organization with a mission to fight bias, bigotry, and racism. And at the center of all of the programs and all of the work that we're doing in Rhode Island, we have the voice of young people, and really honored today to support this great cause and be on the right side of the equity. So equity impact statement holds significance for youth, and this statement can address pressing issues that directly impact young individuals and their future and their prospect and where they're going on in their future lives. So making this statement public is not only going to help the community, but it's going to help build trust around how legislative is doing their process and how young people are being connected in that process. So this transparency of having the equity impact statement is going to gain a clear understanding on how the law might be affecting young people. So that is why it's important. And as we were mentioned, right, equity is an opportunity in action, and I love that. So let's make Rhode Island the 10th state to be adopting this. You felt that in the back, thank you. So let's do so. And today I am honored to be leading my voice and sharing the stage with a young person here with us today. Her name is Yarlene Rosario. She is an alumni of RICJ's program, a dedicated restorative justice practitioner, and passionate about advocating for positive change. So when I got the call and I told Yarlene, she told her mom, it was a whole story. So really being able to have young people participate in these processes makes a difference. Please give it up for Yarlene that will be sharing her bit of a story with you all today.
Hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about why equity and the inclusion of youth voices are essential in the legislative process. I want to share not only the importance of this issue, but also a personal perspective as a youth who has experienced the power of being heard and the pain of being ignored. As a young person, I have been fortunate to witness my peers accomplish extraordinary things with incredible passion and ambition. I've known a friend who created a business plan to address a lack of opportunity in her community and won a national competition. I've seen others who filmed a documentary to raise awareness of mental health disparities in marginalized communities through community outreach in Rhode Island community. I've seen peers who organized a mission trip to Guatemala, serving the young and elderly, and many, many more. These young people saw problems and they acted. Not because they had a formal authority or an extensive resource, but because they believed they could make a difference. When youth are given the trust, space to lead and mentor, to turn their vision into reality, we all benefit. But they also demonstrate something equally important. When youth are shown that people in positions of power, like policymakers, care about their voices, it inspires consistent civic participation and lifelong dedication to community. To discuss youth involvement, we must address equity. Equity is not only a moral imperative, it is a practical necessity in the legislative process and the foundation of meaningful change. It is not just about equality, treating everyone the same. It's acknowledging that different people have different needs, experiences, and starting points. Equity is about leveling the playing field and addressing systemic barriers that historically held some groups back. As a low-income student, I saw how inequitable systems left many behind, especially non-English speakers. Imagine being a hardworking student whose parents chased the American dream only to have an ESL teacher who doesn't speak your language. Students are set up to struggle from the start. I watched my own mother, as a PTO president when I was at Gilbert Stewart Middle School, tirelessly advocate for better resources for students like me. Her fight for equity inspired me and set me on a path to becoming a social justice advocate. But even with this inspiration, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where my voice would be heard. What space did I have to create change, especially during the pandemic when everything felt paralyzing and hopeless? That changed when I found Brad for Community and Justice. Through RCJ, I discovered what it meant to be trusted and be surrounded by peers who believed in their power to create meaningful change. You're telling me that I can make a difference, that my experiences are valuable. Their trust in me as a leader revealed the potential I hadn't seen in myself, proving that lived experiences can drive meaningful progress. Then I expanded my own journey by working with the Juvenile Hearing Board, a community-based diversion program centered on restorative justice. It provides youth who have made mistakes with guidance, resources, and accountability, and second chances. Through my involvement, I've seen how supporting youth and addressing their challenges indirectly can reduce recidivism and empower better choices. It reaffirmed my belief that systems must not only hold the individuals accountable, but also give them the tools to succeed. RCJ and JHB taught me that young people need the space to lead and be heard, not as the sole decision makers, but as crucial contributors to shaping policies that affect us because we are often the first group affected by them, whether it's wage laws that help us to support our families, education policies determining our futures, or climate change that shapes the world we'll inherit. As a Rhode Islander and a US citizen, I stand here with the belief that it is our duty to advocate for our communities and to act on it. We need to teach the youth that change does not have to be overwhelming and that is not an abstract idea. Even the smallest action can create something far bigger than ourselves. When youth witness systems that work to better their communities, they are inspired to believe in those systems. They participate, they lead, they innovate, and they give back. By adopting this bill, Rhode Island has the opportunity to become the 10th state to implement equity impact statements, joining states like Iowa, Colorado, and our neighboring state, Connecticut. This initiative will ensure our policies are crafted with a comprehensive understanding of their effects on all communities, especially who will inherit the outcomes of today's decision. So today I ask you to trust young people, to create spaces for our voices, and to guide us. Let us see a system that is fair, trustworthy, and inclusive. Let us help build it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Darlene. That was Amazing. Next, I'd like to call up Ray Watson to come speak. Ray is the Executive Director of the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights.
Ako nini tampagas katasquams, that is to say, peace be unto you, friends. How are you all doing? Raymond Tuwalks Watson, newly Executive Director for the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, and very excited to be here to share some words in support of this very important bill. Just for a little bit of background and history, Dr. Palermo and I started the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights in the summer of 2022 because when we came out of law school, we saw a real need for access to legal services and supports, particularly by indigenous individuals, communities, and tribal nations, because these are a population that has traditionally and historically been marginalized from those sorts of supports. So when I think about the Center for Indigenous Peoples' Rights, it was really equity that was the founding sort of motivation for it. And I think that that's the real kind of theme that I want to share with our lawmakers today, and for those who see this. You know, equity isn't some sort of political statement or argument you're making. It's just common sense governance. You don't give what high schoolers need to elementary school because it's not what elementary school students need. They need what elementary school students need. You don't give to seniors what you're going to give to teenagers because you give seniors what seniors need. So equity is really just giving populations what they need to be successful. And it seems like if you incorporate more of that into general governments and lawmaking, then you're going to be better stewards and administrators of public resources and supports, and in particular funds. And I think that's what it should all be about. So when I look at this bill, really what I'm seeing is it gives lawmakers a tool to be better informed when they make decisions about how they administer public resources, funds, and supports. And just common sense, why would anyone be against that? And I think that that's probably why there's such a strong branding and marketing campaign against equity, because it allows individuals who don't want to administer funds and resources in an appropriate manner to justify not doing it. But of course, that's not what Rhode Island's all about, right? And our politicians here, you know, we like to think that they're here to do the right thing for the community. Particularly coming from an indigenous perspective, we have a real history of the wrong thing being done in this community towards us. So I'm most certainly here on behalf of the Center in support of this bill to say to our politicians, let us not forget the history that indigenous folks have endured in this particular state. And let's be proactive in making sure that no other communities have to deal with the same challenges that have been placed upon us when in the past things were done intentionally in certain instances to make sure that it was not equitable support for us. The Center supports this bill. We appreciate all of the great work that's been going on behind the scenes in developing it. We appreciate our political leadership for introducing it and being a voice on behalf of it. And we do hope that all of the members of the General Assembly will strongly consider supporting it. Katapatush with your Chusuta, thank you for listening, and Peace Kanash. I'm sure I'll see everyone soon.
Next, I'd like to call up Courtney. Is this thing on? Yeah, it is. Courtney Nicolato, who is the president and CEO of United Way, Rhode Island.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to EPI and to everyone in the campaign for putting this forward and continuing to put good pressure, respectful pressure, but for a much needed topic. Thank you, Senator Mack. Thank you, Rep. Morales. Where'd you go? There you are. Spot you in the purple. I like it. We appreciate all you do every day to advocate for our community and equity, and specifically to make this place better. And not only this place, but everywhere we proudly love here in the state of Rhode Island. Equity for the United Way is at the core of every single solitary thing we do. In fact, it's in our mission. And we purposely put it there because it's not a buzzword. It's not the soup du jour. It is an issue that must need the attention not only in the short term, but for years and years and years to come. And I am a true proponent that information is power. You can't do anything without it. And so we are here to help our legislators be their best and do the best work possible. And United Way is, as I mentioned, laser focused in this work. We live this work. And in our Live United 2025 strategic plan, we go beyond. We focus on our work on justice, that's a new one, isn't it? Hey, let's bring it all together, why not? Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion principles into every aspect of our work. We are here to serve. We are here to move the needle together. We cannot do that unless we call things for what it is. We also know that the decisions that are made in this building change lives. They have long-term implications. Session might be short. The implications of the decisions that are made are long and pervasive, and sometimes have a lot of negative effects. So what can we do to level the playing field for every single Rhode Islander who deserves it? Our staff, our board at United Way, and certainly our community advisory board hold us accountable. Many of you are in the room because I know you hold us accountable around the work that needs to be done, but the realities still exist, and we have to serve the incredible mosaic of humans that make up our beautiful state. We also at the United Way hear directly from Rhode Islanders, and in fact, in a couple of weeks, we'll announce the number in 2024 of humans we spoke to, but I will tell you it's over 200,000. And we hear directly from them when they're in need, when they have nowhere else to turn, and we also see when actions have consequences, when the work and the short-term decisions made here have long-term consequences. We also educate our community through our Equity Challenge, where thousands of Rhode Islanders participate because Rhode Islanders are eager to learn. They're eager to grow. Equity is not a buzzword, it is an action. It is commitment, and it is a long-term commitment. We also work in Providence and proudly around our equity fund with the city, because we know we have to invest in order to make change. I truly believe that I am proud of the work that we've done collectively and where we've moved, but we know there is an incredible amount of work left to be done. So with the time I have left, let me say that this proposed pilot of the Equity Impact Bill is a critical step forward. By embedding the concept of equity into legislative process, we can ensure that when decisions are made for the long term, the considerations are understood in the short term. We will also help ensure that every Rhode Islander's need is considered, regardless of race, zip code, income, and that every Rhode Islander can have an opportunity to thrive. We have to be intentional about what legislation, about its purpose, about how the laws are implemented, and we have to understand who is impacted for better or for worse. Including an equity assessment step in the House rules will be similar to looking at both ways before you cross the street. We have to ensure that we are doing right by all. Much of the work we do and proudly do is to remedy the effects of legal but discriminatory legislation federally and within the state that has impacted many communities in a negative way for a long time. We want to help inform, we want to help support our legislators as they're making critically important decisions on all of our behalf. The Equity Impact Bill will help us be mindful of the different needs of every Rhode Islander, no matter who they are, or whether they are in this building or outside of this building, whether they are in your House district or Senate district. We are so excited to support this effort. We will continue our commitment to breaking down the barriers to systemic inequities, to create opportunities, and build a stronger Rhode Island that we all love. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up Representative David Morales, who will be introducing House Resolution 5010.
To our neighbors, community advocates, and friends in the media, now that we have started another legislative term, it's important that we take the time to center ourselves and recognize that every legislative document that is introduced, from a resolution to a bill to a budget article, is in fact a moral document. They are a moral document that reflect the values of a legislator and the changes that they seek to make in our communities. And while we have processes in place that currently exist that analyze a legislation's impact over the state budget, otherwise known as fiscal notes, it has become increasingly clear over the years that there is a need to evaluate legislation through the lens of equity, especially as we discuss the pressing issues impacting the working people and families of our state, from housing to education to the environment and healthcare. That's why this coalition has introduced House Resolution 5010, which would amend the House rules throughout the 2025 and 2026 legislative session by enabling the Speaker of the House and the Rhode Island Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian American, and Pacific Islander Caucus to respectively select an upwards of 5 bills that each year would receive an equity impact statement. The equity impact statement would be drafted by our Legislative Counsel's office in coordination with the Rhode Island Commission on Prejudice and Bias, institutions of higher education, and respective state agencies as needed. Now, the value of an equity impact statement in of itself cannot be overstated, as it would leverage data to measure how legislation affects historical disparities that are embedded within our state's laws. Because by assessing race, gender, disabilities, ethnicity, and other factors, equity impact statements will help our legislature answer a critical question that must be answered during committee hearings and floor debates. Will this measure increase or reduce equity? For example, when we are evaluating legislation to launch a small business grant program, it's important to understand whether the program is designed to favor businesses that have established long-standing relationships with banks. Because in turn, this small business proposal can leave out small business owners of color. Intentional or not, this program in of itself, while it may appear to be race neutral at face value, when you dig deeper into the details, we'll note that there will be racial disparities within the legislation once it is passed and once the money goes out the door. Similarly, we have to ask questions around our criminal legal system, especially when they're related to punitive efforts. It's important for us in the legislature to understand, how do mandatory minimum sentences impact different members of our communities based on the rate in which people are actually charged and tried for their crimes? So clearly, equity impact statements are critical tools that we as legislators and our staff members, and most importantly the public, can use to evaluate and understand how legislation serves to either benefit or potentially hurt our communities. Whether it's by coincidence or by design, the reality is that once legislation passes and it is applied, it will have an impact on our communities. So it's best that we are informed from the get-go. And all that being said, it's also important to recognize that a week from now, we will see a shift in administration as President Trump takes office. And unfortunately, this president has a track record of attacking equity initiatives, as does potential members of his cabinet. So while there may be a national movement to discredit equity, to discredit diversity, to discredit inclusion. Here in Rhode Island, we are taking the immediate steps to not only protect, but to embrace diversity, to embrace equity, and to embrace inclusivity on all the legislation that we move forward with over the next 2 years. So to our partners and supporters of this legislation, we thank you for being in this fight, because we know that equity does not come naturally. It requires a firm commitment to justice. It requires us to be advocates and to show up and to demonstrate just why it is critically important that the tools are available, but most importantly, that they are actively being used to better serve our communities. And so I look forward to being able to enter tomorrow's committee hearing and be able to go before the House Committee of Rules to further explain why it is necessary that we amend our rules, we incorporate equity impact statements, and most importantly, that we move forward on legislation throughout the 2025 legislative session and the state budget, regardless of potential deficits, that will prioritize the needs of our communities on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of ethnicity.
Hear, hear.
And I know that this is one that we're going to do collectively. And so for that, I thank you, and I also want to recognize a long-standing partner in this fight, being Senator Tiara Mack. Because between the House and the Senate, we both have that shared responsibility of ensuring that our chambers are prioritizing our needs. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who is here and who's been in this fight for a while. I'm going to fight back on something that David said. Equity impact should come naturally to us because it is a love language. Good policy is a love language and is a statement that tells our neighbors across the state from Woonsocket to Westerly that we see them and that we love them. Equity impact statements is a powerful way that we can show all Rhode Islanders in every single community that we see their struggles, we understand their struggles, and that here in the State House, we are addressing their struggles every day when it is hard, when it is easy, when we have a transition in office, and when we have budget deficits. Because those are the people that we were elected to serve, those are the people that we are here to serve, and those are the people that we love, because we love every single Rhode Islander. When I was working in 2017 with Planned Parenthood to make sure that we had a doula bill, yes, we were focusing on the Black maternal health crisis, but through passing a doula bill and through passing Medicaid coverage of a doula, we ensured that there are better health options for every single birthing parent in our state. And by making sure that we went the additional route to have Medicaid reimbursements, we ensured that the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, and the mothers who are more likely to have low birth weights and to have more health complications because of their low income status had the tools to participate in legislation that told all of our parents and our families that we see you and that we love you. And then when we expanded that to having certified lactation counselors as part of that legislation, we created jobs and reimbursements for those healthcare workers who are working with their moms inside and outside of the hospitals when they no longer have care, because we see them and we love them. When we fight for every single person in our state, whether it's the 60% of renters in Providence or the 40% of renters throughout the state, it's not because we want to fight back against housing, but it's because we believe that every single person we love deserves a warm place to lay their head at night. And that is why Equity Impacts is not about fighting for more for us, it's about fighting for more for every single person in our state. And that's why I hope that these pieces of legislation, whether we're talking about transportation, that's going to impact low-income Rhode Islanders, that's going to impact our elders, no matter where they live in our state, is going to have an impact in every single legislator's community. It's going to have an impact in every neighbor's community. Whether we're talking about having more opportunities for people in our state to have a living wage, whether it's our prisoners at the ACI who are capped at $3 a day, Whether it's our tipped minimum wage workers who are capped at $3.89 a day, or whether it's making sure that the $15 minimum wage we fought for and won in 2021 is going to meet the over $25 living wage needed for all Rhode Islanders who we love to be able to support their families, to be able to afford a home, and to be able to thrive in a state that we all love. Equity Impacts is about telling people a story through policy, that this building is not a complicated place to navigate, but that it's a place that sees your struggle, addresses your struggle, and then tells the people that they are in community with, whether it's a legislator who just joined the session, like I have in the corner from Woonsocket, Mark Thompson, or whether it's a legislator who I've worked with who sat beside me, Senator Basilian. All of these policies are languages that we can speak no matter your community, no matter your background, and no matter who you were elected to fight for. Because when we fight for everyone, we win. And the history of Rhode Island is about fighting for equity. This summer when we were fighting and we won to reject the Constitutional Convention, I uncovered a very Rhode Island story of fighting for equity. When it was Black Rhode Islanders and Irish Rhode Islanders saying that because we are not property owners, we do not have the right to vote, even though we live here, they fought. And when there was a constitution proposed in 1841 that did not have the right for all Rhode Islanders to vote, including Black men, what did they do? They shut down that Constitutional Convention in 1842, got the first Constitution of Rhode Island that included, for the first time in history, Black men the right to vote, Irish Americans the right to vote. The only thing we did exclude were the right to Narragansett explicitly, Narragansett tribe members explicitly the right to vote, but that came later. But the history of Rhode Island is about fighting for equity, whether we call it equity, whether we call it love, whether we call it validating that there are struggles that we may not understand, but that we can address in policy. That is what we are here for. And so when people try to challenge us on what is the purpose, what is the impact, we can say love, we can say morality, we can say to do a good job and to represent the people who need to be represented. But it's because we have a duty, we have an onus to the people in the state we are called to represent, and because we love this state and want to make sure that every single Rhode Islander, no matter if they have a permanent address or if they're living outdoors unsheltered on the coldest nights of the year in New England, we have a solution, we have policy, we have priorities, and we have love. So thank you for the champions who have been doing this work for years alongside me and my counterpart, Rep. Morales, and thank you to all of my fellow legislators who have been here as we continue to fight to make sure that no matter what is happening at the federal level, that we know right here in our state there are people who care about the Rhode Islanders who need it most.
Thank you, Senator. Before we close out here, folks, two things. If all the speakers and the legislative leaders here could come together at the end, we can take a photo for this. That'd be great. I'm sure Mike here would really appreciate that. And second, I'd like to, earlier, Senator Mack recognized Senator Brian Thompson and thank him for being here as well. And so I'd like to close this out by asking Nina Harrison, our policy director at Economic Progress Institute, to give her remarks.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much to our amazing speakers. I think I definitely took some notes. Thank you for, most of all, demonstrating your commitment to equity. I think we've heard from a lot of people of all the ways that equity is critical and important. And as many of you know, America has a history that includes many harmful and discriminatory laws. And I've been in rooms where I've heard Congressman Magaziner say that given that so many of these discriminatory laws in our past were intentional, we have to be equally intentional about creating policies that remediate that harm, remediate the disparities, and the legacy of those discriminatory policies that we are still feeling today all across this country and across the state. So thank you for being here to be intentional about making the future better than the past. I'd also like to share something that my colleagues and I heard at a conference we were at in DC, and the speaker said that, much like Senator Mack said, in the nearly 250 years that we have been a country, those who oppose equality and equity have a history of losing. okay? And that means that those people in this room who are fighting for equity and freedom, we are on the side that has a history of winning. So we will win. You know, it is only a matter of time, and I'm happy to be here with you as we begin this fight at the beginning of the legislative session. Today is the first step, and tomorrow is the second step, and that you can fight and show up and demonstrate your intentionality by submitting testimony in support of Rep. Morales' House bill to include equity impact statements in a part of the House rules. Please submit written and or in-person testimony and make your voice heard. And if we keep fighting, we will win. And we can also fight these fights outside of the State House. So as much as I do want you to show up and submit your testimony and make your voice heard, I also want all of us to challenge ourselves and everyone we know to implement equity impact statements and assessments in our own lives. We can make those assessments in the policies we have at our own organizations, and the way that we operate clubs or coalitions or anything else that we run. So don't think that policies that come through here are the only things that require an equity impact analysis or statement. We can all benefit from implementing that in and outside of the State House. So again, thank you. Thank you for being part of the winning team, and thank you for starting off this session demonstrating what you think is important, and I think what most Rhode Islanders think is important: equity and freedom and the opportunity to thrive.